it. Oh, yeah, for sure.
All right, thanks. All right, so everybody's ready? Time will start now. My partner Ryan and I proudly affirm the resolution. So the United Kingdom should reverse its decision to incorporate Huawei in the development of its 5G network. Before we get to the end of the debate, let's cover some issues. This is a policy round indicated by the should in the resolution, meaning we're weighing this on net benefits. If you think at the end of the day, the United Kingdom reversing this decision yields a net positive in the world, then you'll be signing your ballot for the affirmation. As far as definitions go, we feel like it's contextual. If you need any clarification on definitions, we're good? We're good. Perfect. Awesome. As far as plain text go, plain text, it's just going to be immediate reversing. The United Kingdom recently signed a deal with Huawei Technologies, a Chinese-based phone and tech development company, to incorporate 5G networks. It's just the United Kingdom is going to reverse this decision. Time frame is immediate. We don't think there's a budget. Any questions on plain text? Perfect. With that out of the way, let's get into the two key reasons why you're going to be voting for the affirmation in the debate. The first advantage is going to be Chinese modernization. Subpoint A is uniqueness. Huawei uniquely increases the modernization of the People's Liberation Army, emboldening their aggression. There's a couple warrants for that. The first is espionage. 7 of the top security experts in the world have all cited Huawei as stealing vital IP information and military information in areas like Africa, Australia, and the UK. It's also important to know that the UK is a member of Five Eyes, which is an international security organization that holds some of the most vital information in the world. One of the most vital security lanes in the world is signing a deal with one of the most notorious espionage groups in the world. The second argument is going to be joint modernization. According to Arthur Ping, Chinese policy analyst, the growth of 5G has been key in modernizing missile detection systems, radar, and other military technology. We see that the current development of this technology is also developing Chinese military presence. The third argument is going to be legitimacy. According to Elsa Kai, a Harvard professor, while recent internal policy conflicts have stopped Chinese expansionism, the growth of 5G networks has been key to rallying support behind Xi Jinping and growing soft power. We see that the development of this 5G technology is emboldening aggression in areas like the South China Sea. However, the fourth argument is going to be economic growth. According to The Guardian, top military generals have all affirmed that a majority of economic growth goes towards the military right now in China. So subpoint B is the impact. We clearly see that right now this deal is going to lead to Chinese expansionism and economic growth for them, which bolsters their military. What's the negative effects of this? The impact is hotspot escalation. The first argument we're going to make here is, according to Cerrito, Chinese an expert in Chinese information technology, means that increasing this technology increases aggression. Cyber attacks against Taiwan are growing at an all-time high. The second key thing in this impact scenario that you need to realize is that current U.S. military presence is preventing conflict in several hotspots. But if China continues to modernize their military, they'll become more aggressive. We have a couple warrants for that. The first is the Senkaku Islands. The recent sale of F-14 jets to Japan has influenced Chinese military in the region. The second warrant is going to be Taiwan. The election of the secessionist Tsai Ing-wen, is a famous Taiwan secessionist, is bolstering Chinese aggression in the area, leading to the deployment of DF-17 and DF-41 missiles in the area. And the last one is this, what does this say?
Spratly Islands.
Yeah, the Spratly Islands. China's renewed military presence in the area and are increasing their territorial claim. So, big overview on what we've just covered. We see that the current deal is in bolstering the Chinese military. The current economic profit and the 5G presence is increasing Chinese military presence in certain areas. We tell you that's really bad at risk of hotspot escalation and conflicts in areas like Taiwan and the Senkaku Islands. So how exactly does reversing this decision stop all the negative impacts that we just discussed? Well, that's the solvency. We see if the UK shifts to Western allies when it comes to 5G network, this massive economic growth for the Chinese military, it will be cut short. We see that areas like Vodafone and the Deutsche Telekom company have already signed minor 5G deals within the United Kingdom. There are alternatives to Huawei. Even the South Korean telecom company has even already set up certain 5G operations within the United Kingdom. This means that this major source of Huawei Technologies' profit no longer goes to modernizing the military and instead can go to other 5G providers. So, that's the first reason you're going to be voting for the affirmation in the debate. What's the second? The second argument is going to be brain drain. Subpoint A is the status quo. We tell you that right now, low-income countries are losing their STEM workers at a fast rate. There's a couple key warrants. The first warrant is Zimbabwe. When the United Kingdom and other areas increased access to H-1B1 visas, we saw the amount of doctors and engineers in Zimbabwe drop at a staggering rate. The B subpoint is India. India is growing right now in the STEM industry, but it's losing a lot of its engineers to areas like China. And then subpoint C is the infrastructure. Oftentimes, a lot of these high-skilled workers leave because of the perception that the country they currently live in don't have the infrastructure to support them. However, this is hurting STEM growth, which is key to these nations. We see in areas like India and Kenya, they rely heavily on the bolstering in STEM technology in order to remain economically competitive. However, Huawei Technologies is uniquely bad at poaching workers from low-income countries. Over 50% of their engineers and computer science workers are hired internationally, specifically from areas like India, like Zimbabwe, areas where they can appeal with higher wages than given in their actual countries. However, right now, currently, these high-skilled workers don't have access into the UK due to the recent leave from the EU. When the United Kingdom left the European Union, it left a lot of the free immigration processes that happened as a result. This means that the UK has been stopping the brain drain process as so far. Subpoint B is the impacts. We see that when these high-skilled workers leave the countries that they're originally from, this creates economic downfall in the areas. They're no longer able to rise from cycles of poverty as they can't gain access to this high-competitive, high-skilled worker field. So subpoint C is the solvency. How does reversing this decision stop this from happening? Well, the main issue is with reversing the decision, these high-skilled workers no longer have the access into the United Kingdom that they did before, meaning that these high-skilled workers can stay in their countries and still develop economic STEM technology within them. But the second argument we're going to make is, seeing as how the United Kingdom is one of Huawei Technologies' biggest ventures, this big economic hit will discourage them and disincentivize them from starting projects in low-income areas. So if we want to stop this brain drain from low-income areas, if we want to stop escalation in the military, I highly encourage an affirmative ballot.
I'm Audrey.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go.
Okay. Whenever everybody's ready. Good? Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to begin by going over our case, and then I'll move on to my opponent's case. First of all, I want to say we agree with the basic framework of this round, that it should be weighed on net benefits. So whoever can prove to you at the end of today's round they're doing the greatest good for the greatest number. I'm going to go ahead and get into our case. So our first contention here is going to be that our plan destroys the UK economy. Subpoint A here is going to be UK 5G infrastructure. So they've talked to you a lot about Huawei as a company in China, but let's talk about what it actually means for the UK, because there's a reason that they signed this deal, right? And the reason is that the UK has actually been using Huawei products and manufacturing in their telecom networks for the last 15 years. On top of that, every single major telecom industry and like 5G developer within the UK has been developing their 5G networks on the basis of Huawei products. It only makes sense to continue this integration. The UK 5G networks have not developed at all on their own and have been completely reliant on Huawei and on this 5G network as they have developed. And they need to continue doing that in order to continue learning and developing this 5G network. At the same time, the UK has managed to strike a very delicate and important balance, which is that when they signed this deal with Huawei, they limited them in a number of ways. The first one is they said that Huawei could only control up to 35% of the market share, which means that while these UK companies are able to learn from Huawei technology, from this 5G technology, of which Huawei is the most cutting edge in the world, they are still able to continue developing on their own, with 65%, the vast majority of the market share, reserved only for UK companies. We see that if they were to have a reversal like this and completely ban Huawei, to reverse their decision to incorporate Huawei, the UK economy would tank. The 5G network is the future. According to The Guardian, if the UK were to reverse their decision, it would mean financial ruin for the UK, which has developed the future of its telecoms network and communication on the idea that it will be able to integrate with Huawei. They'd see major financial loss from not having the infrastructure they need to develop the internet of the future. 5G network allows for faster integration of homes, of farmland, of all these different things, and it's not something that the UK can live without. Subpoint B here is going to be connecting agriculture. So more than 70% of the land in the UK is currently used for agriculture. And one thing that Huawei development within the UK is being used for is specifically syncing up that agriculture and making it work more efficiently, like use the resources more efficiently, and using farm equipment more efficiently. So it's able to basically use these really fast internet 5G connections in order to connect farm equipment with weather patterns in order to instruct farmers to use that land more efficiently. So we see that if they were to reverse this, we would see the reversal of important strides made in the agricultural sector in the UK in order to use this technology effectively. Next, we're going to move on to our second disadvantage today, which is that it goes backward. Their plan moves backwards on climate change. So I'm sure you've heard countless times throughout this tournament and in general that climate change is an extremely pressing issue. It is the #1 priority of every nation on this earth, including the UK. Huawei technology and 5G technology within the UK makes it possible for them to vastly increase energy efficiency. In the UK, 40% of all energy used, which basically contributes to these greenhouse gases that contribute to global warming and create the situation we're in now, 40% of that energy is directly coming from homes using these networks that 5G networks would replace. 5G networks replacing them would mean that they use energy much faster and are able to basically decrease the amount of pollution they're doing. So with the inclusion of a 5G Huawei network, the UK is able to decrease the amount of polluting they're doing drastically, but without it, they're going to continue polluting at higher and higher rates without increasing their energy efficiency. So they need to do something now to change it, and by reversing this decision, the UK would be moving backwards while the rest of the world moves forwards. Which brings me to our third and final disadvantage, which is that the UK is turning its back on the future. Subpoint A here is going to be the UK itself. So like I mentioned, the UK has incorporated Huawei into its telecom networks for 15 years. This is not a new thing. At the same time, the rest of the world, including Germany and other areas across the world, have incorporated Huawei. Actually, most of the world besides the United States and Australia are reliant on Huawei right now and use those resources to create their 5G network. If the UK decides not to, they will be left in the dust. M16, which is the #1 security agency within the UK, did a 4-year vet on Huawei over the span of the 15 years that it worked with the UK telecoms network, and found that there was no use by the Chinese government of any kind of shady material. They find that Huawei vastly improved the telecom systems within the UK, and they found that a reversal of this decision, in fact, which is why they recommended to the Prime Minister to accept Huawei and incorporate it, is vital to the continued growing of the UK's telecoms network and of the UK economy. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and move on to my opponent's case. So their first contention is about the Chinese growth in military. The first point I want to make here is that they have absolutely no link to the military, and here's the problem with it. Specifically within the UK deal, there are a lot of things outlined to make sure that Huawei would not have any ties to the mainland Chinese government in the ways that they have had previously. One of those is that Huawei would be forced not to communicate any results from working within the UK with the Chinese government. The second thing is that Huawei Huawei is a private company, which means that the revenue is not going to the Chinese government, it's not going to the Chinese military, it's going to Huawei. So any revenue they make in the UK is specifically going to the business of Huawei, it's not going to the Chinese government. And the third thing they did, among other things, is capping Huawei to only 35% of the network share, which means, again, that Huawei cannot take over in the UK. They can't make the kind of money that our opponents seem to think that they would be able to. Next, they talked about stealing military secrets. It was determined by both the German government and the M16, like the greatest security force within the UK, that Huawei was not stealing any military secrets. When they talk about Five Eyes was actually consulted before this decision. Security Network signed off on Huawei being incorporated into the UK because any kind of fear-mongering about it has been shown to just be basically people making predictions that haven't been founded. In fact, in the US, which is what some of the studies that they're citing here, which has historically resisted Huawei, recently the Secretary of Commerce in the United States announced that US companies would start being allowed to make contracts with Huawei. So everyone around the world is embracing Huawei as the future. Next, they talked about legitimizing the Chinese government. First of all, this does nothing to change where the UK stands on the Chinese government and what they're doing. In fact, it might reverse things. It might make them cooperate more, if anything, because now they're like incorporating their businesses. So it probably leads to less tension in the South China Sea. But once again, Huawei is a completely private company, which means that we're not going to be seeing these impacts they talk about. And they say that basically we will shift to other vendors in the UK if we don't have Huawei. That's literally impossible. There are no other vendors in the UK that have not built their networks on Huawei. Next, they talk about brain drain. Once again, there's literally no link here because another part of the provisions of this deal with the UK was that all of the maintenance and installation work done in the UK for Huawei would have to be done by people from within the UK. So they're not recruiting any new workers, and this is not an expansion that requires Huawei to develop a bunch of new technology. They're just putting their lowest level 5G technology that they already have existing and implementing it into the UK. So none of that happens. And in fact, if there's a slightly more like immigration to the UK because they're saying that they left with Brexit, maybe immigration is a good thing, but we're certainly not seeing brain drain since it's guaranteed that all maintenance workers are within the UK.
So the order is going to be...
Sorry, just like the sheets or...
No sheets. Can I start water real quick? The order is going to be the affirmative case, then the negative case, all in order.
Well, you said affirmative and negative?
Are we all ready? I'll start my... Oh, wait, sorry.
Sorry.
Are we all good?
Yeah.
I'll start my time in 3, 2, 1. Once again, my partner Drew and I would like to stand on the firmest affirmation of our topic given today. With that out of the way, let's move on to the main advantages of the AF plan. First, let's go over our status quo story. We tell you that Huawei uniquely leads to the modernization of the PLA for 4 main reasons. We'll go on the line by line. Our first argument was espionage. We told you that 7 security experts from all around the world have all cited Huawei as stealing information. That's specifically bad because Britain is part of Five Eyes, one of the leading international information groups. They make 2 main responses here. First of all, they say that certain deals and new provisions in the Huawei and the UK deal will prevent this from happening. But the thing is, these deals literally existed in other countries, the countries you cite, Germany, the UK, Australia, and America, and Canada, and yet this espionage still happened. The deals may happen in word, and they may happen de jure, but de facto, when it's actually implemented, Huawei just uses espionage. That's empirically proven by the fact that literally last week, people from Huawei were arrested in Australia for espionage. They make this argument that other people are accepting Huawei, and they bring up the US, but the thing is, the US has literally blacklisted Huawei. It is still blacklisted, and you can fact check that after round. Their second argument, though, against espionage is they have no ties to the Chinese government. 2 main responses here. First of all, it's incredibly likely that, literally every other Chinese corporation, it is a state-owned corporation, meaning it obviously has heavy ties to the government. But our second argument, again, is going to be the fact that they have been caught stealing information, the fact that they've been caught using espionage for the Chinese government means they obviously have ties to the government. Now, let's go over our second argument for why they uniquely enable the modernization of the PLA, which they entirely conceded, and that's joint modernization. We make the argument that as Huawei builds 5G technology, it allows them to increase their radar, missile detection, and missile targeting system, which they have entirely conceded. But our third argument is about legitimacy. Their response wasn't really coherent. They misunderstood the legitimacy point. Our argument is that previously in the status quo, the CCP has been factional, like they've been put into factions, which has not allowed Xi Jinping to continue the expansionist policy of China. However, 5G and the growth of 5G under Xi Jinping has strengthened soft power and has allowed him to create a coalition of people. It has allowed him to rally people under the CCP to enable expansionism, which is uniquely enabled escalation in hotspots. But our fourth argument about the economy, they say this argument that it's not good for the Chinese economy because there's already there's a cap on how much profit they can make. Okay, there's a cap on how much profit they make, but it's still a considerable cap. That is still a lot of profit, a majority of which will go to the modernization of the CCP. But the biggest mistake that the negative made is that they completely conceded our impact scenario. They have completely conceded that China is an offensive realist. They want to escalate conflicts in the Senkaku Islands, in Taiwan, and the Spratly Islands. They've also entirely conceded our first argument that Chinese information dominance is key to military escalation. We tell you that ever since Tsai Ing-wen has been elected, Taiwan has seen an unprecedented amount of cyber attacks from China because policy analysts say that information dominance from China is key to affirming offensive realism. So, what does that mean? If China has A, a more modernized military, and B, more information from espionage, that means they will escalate conflicts in the three hotspots that they entirely conceded. They completely conceded that conflict is likely in the Senkaku Islands because of the recent sale of F-14 jets to Japan. They completely conceded that it's likely in Taiwan because of the election of Tsai Ing-wen and the deployment of DF-17 and DF-41 missiles in the Taiwan Strait. And they also conceded it's likely in the Spratly Islands because countries like Indonesia, Malaysia, and Vietnam have all laid new claims to these Spratly Islands. So, in other words, they have conceded that conflict is likely in these areas and that the enforcement in Huawei in the UK uniquely enables this conflict. Now, what do they say about our solvency? They just say, no, it's not true. These companies can't build 5G in the UK. Except they entirely conceded when Drew told you that Telecom, the South Korean company, said they can completely tear down Huawei's technology and rebuild it in 6 months to build a 5G network. They also conceded our arguments about German telephone companies like Vodafone and Deutsche that have signed 5G deals with the UK so they can build 5G infrastructure. We make the argument that if we shift from Chinese 5G to these Western ally 5G, that A, strengthens the economy of Western allies, thus strengthening their military and decreasing the propensity for conflict in the South China Sea, and B, it declines Xi Jinping's legitimacy, which doesn't enable him to be expansionist. Next, our advantage 2 about brain drain. Really, their only response to our brain drain argument is they have this, they say that, there's a deal in, the thing. That means that, they all have to be UK workers. That's not true. Drew literally tells you that after this deal announced, Huawei hires 50% of its people internationally, meaning they're going to be hired. People from Zimbabwe and India are going to move into the UK. That weakens the STEM infrastructure of the UK, weakening these developing countries, leading to worldwide economic decline. I'll take your question at the end of time. Leading to worldwide economic decline. Next, over the negative case. Let's go over their first contention about how it destroys the UK economy. We have 3 main responses to the ASA point. Our first argument is there's literally no impact to a decline in economic growth. According to NPR, the UK has record economic growth because they have 1.4% GDP growth and 4% unemployment. We can take a small hit, the small transitional hit that it will take to transfer from Huawei technology to other Western allies. But our second argument is take their arguments with a grain of salt. According to the Secretary of Britain, all of this argument about Huawei, if we do it like the UK economy will go down, it's all fear-mongering. Everything economic, the biggest conglomerate in Britain, has been on a propaganda campaign, forcing misinformation that is trying to make Huawei seem more important than it actually is. That was literally the Economic Secretary of Britain who said that. Most of their information is probably from propaganda channels funded by Everything Economic, who's been on a propaganda journey to make Huawei seem much more important than it really is. But our third argument to supplement A is going to be cross-apply our solvency from advantage 1. Again, the main mistake they make is they don't do any work on this point. We tell you that it is feasible to shift to Western technologies like Vodafone, Deutsche, and Telecom. Telecom can literally switch in 6 months. So sure, maybe for 6 months we don't have that 5G infrastructure. But again, 1, we can take that hit, and 2, it's far outweighed by the impacts we tell you in the affirmative case. Next, on the BISA point about agriculture, we have 2 main arguments here. First of all, cross-apply our advantage 1, impact. If the Chinese economy, either way, one economy is going to grow. In the negative world, when we keep the Huawei deal, the Chinese economy is going to grow. In the app world, Western economies are going to grow because they're going to be the ones placing the 5G infrastructure. We say it's better for Western economies to grow because they trade more with the UK. right? If the Chinese economy grows in the negative world, they're not going to trade as much in the UK. That means we see more net economic growth for the UK because we see the growth of German companies like Western Vodafone and Douche, and the growth of South Korean companies like Telecom. But our second argument against agriculture is going to be cross-apply our brain drain argument. Obviously, if developing countries and their economies are falling, they're not going to be able to buy as much agriculture from the UK, which means they're probably not going to be able to make as much net revenue. Contention 2 about climate change. Again, the main fundamental mistake is there is no impact here. The UK will still have 5G from these other suppliers. But our second argument against their second contention is they're going to be their worse for climate change for two main reasons. The ace of point is going to be cross-supplier advantage 1. Again, they embolden not only the Chinese military, but the Chinese economy. And China is literally the number one emitter of greenhouse gases in the world. If they embolden the Chinese economy, which means we have even more greenhouse gases being emitted, that means they're obviously worse for climate change. But the beast of point is going to be the cross-supplier advantage 2 about developing countries. When countries have a depressed economy, which they will per our second advantage, then that means they're going to switch more to oil and fossil fuels because they're simply cheaper to use than green energy like wind and solar panels. If they depress the economy by leading to brain drain, that means they lead to more emissions from developing countries. Next, their third contention about we're going to stay back in the future. Again, the fundamental mistake they make is that the UK will have 5G no matter which way you vote, aff or nay. If you vote for the negative, they're going to have 5G from China. If you vote for the affirmative, they'll have 5G from Western allies such as Germany or South Korea. So again, we don't link. And that's really the main fundamental mistake that the negative makes here. They assume that post-plan we're not going to have any 5G at all. And while that may be true for a transitional period, we tell you that there are Western allies that can fill in.
I'll do the same order, so I'll go through after next. Yeah. Okay, everyone's ready? You guys are good? Wonderful. So right off the top, if you look at their first advantage of the Chinese modernism and the idea of increasing the military, the biggest issue they have is they try to conflate Huawei and the Chinese military together. However, they concede a bunch of points that show that they're clearly separate. The first point they concede is my partner's third response here of the fact that Huawei is a private company, meaning that all revenue and all profit that goes to it still remains in Huawei. Even if they are based in China and are trading the Chinese stock market, it doesn't mean the money is going to the military revenue stream, and they haven't proven in any way how the Chinese military is actually going to benefit from this. They say nothing. The one link that they could try to make is the alleged U.S. claim that China has the potential to ask Huawei for information if they want. However, in the 15 years that the UK has been cooperating with Huawei, not a single time has the Chinese government asked Huawei for this kind of information. And in addition, Huawei has stated publicly that it will refuse to give up this personal information to the Chinese government if it is asked. And knowing that Huawei is such an important company in China, as they say themselves, it's a big company, we know the Chinese government wouldn't be able to just destroy it or bully it because it has such power. So realistically speaking, no money and no information is going to the Chinese military from Huawei, which means that all of their claims, when they say that the two things that are going to increase Chinese dominance and are going to cause this aggression is more modern Chinese military and more information, neither of those things happen if we keep this deal, because there's no information and no money going to the Chinese government. Now, they try to say that the deal won't work because deals existed in the US, Australia, and Germany. The big fact here is they're just empirically and fundamentally wrong. There was no deal in the United States and there was no deal in Australia. The US banned Huawei right off the bat, as soon as Huawei started becoming, because the perception lies in US protectionism and this idea that America is better and that the Chinese, and basically racism, that the Chinese are evil and bad. And so we've favored American companies. The US Secretary of Commerce stated publicly that he wants America's 5G to be America first and only built by American firms. So it's not because of security risks, it's because of blatant racism. And we see that this means that there's no deal in Australia, there's no deal in the US, and what they're saying is just empirically false. They say that 35% market share is still large. However, the important point here is it's not big enough for control. They won't have control over the network, which means they can't do the things with the money and the information that they claim the Chinese military is going to gain from. So overall here, they try to say that this is going to lead to more military. However, that's clearly not the case. There is no link here to the military, and there's no way that we're going to increase information for the Chinese military. They concede the analysis that M16, which is basically the CIA for the UK, and Germany say it was safe, and that Five Eyes, the big security group, agreed that this was an okay deal. So with that, we know that 5G through Huawei is going to be safe and secure, and it's going to be an effective way to go towards for 5G in the future. On the second point of brain drain, they basically just rely on this one fact saying that Huawei in general, 50% of their hires are international. However, sure, that's the case if you're looking at the Huawei in China, where they manufacture things and where they do a lot of development and do a lot of research. In the UK, the only thing that the deal says that we're talking about today is incorporating Huawei into the development of 5G. All the workers are already in the UK because it's incorporation with, in conjunction, as we've been saying this entire round, and that they've conceded, with UK telecom companies, which means the workers are already on the ground. You already have engineers, you already have technicians, you don't need this. But the second response here is that brain drain is not an effective argument because the argument relies on the idea that STEM workers in underdeveloped countries or developing countries, once you pull them away, suddenly you prevent that country from developing. But that's wrong for two reasons. The first reason is that you don't actually have, you're not taking away all the workers from that region if you're taking a little bit. Like Huawei, one company, is going to take away more workers when half its hires in the UK than the entirety of the population of India taking STEM. It doesn't make sense. You're not going to be removing all of the possibilities. Secondly, developing countries don't often have the same infrastructure as other developed countries, so it's better to have these people go where they can make an impact and then eventually come back home or bring that knowledge back to other developing countries and increase it. So in general, you're seeing that immigration is a net positive for the economy, and we both agree that we're looking at net benefits for the entire world. We're seeing it's better if that happens. But furthermore, the most important point on this point, I'll take in a sec, is that this is not part of the deal. They concede that in the deal, it needs UK workers. The only statistic they rely on is this 50% international hire rate, but that's only for Huawei in China, where the majority of the workers are. So we're not going to be seeing any brain drain whatsoever. I'll take it.
Okay, so just a quick question. What is the evidence or the precedent that supports that when high-skilled workers move to a STEM-based country that they're likely to bring that knowledge back?
You often see people giving money back home or encouraging and role modeling for others to go to university, pursue STEM, and it shows it as a path for people of that nation. Look, you can do 5G as well. So it encourages this in the future. With that, I'll be moving on to our case. Our first contention is that the plan destroys the UK economy. The first evidence they bring up is they try to say that the UK is fine because it's growing at 1.4 GDP and has 4% unemployment. First thing's wrong is that the analysis is incorrect here. 4% unemployment is higher than you want in an ideal economy, and we know that following Brexit, it's going to be much higher going in because you see a lot of problems with especially UK and Ireland, which have very linked economies. Because of this Brexit deal, you're going to be seeing huge gaps there, increasing the unemployment. If you throw in the fact that you're going to destroy the basically entirety of the telecom business, and they say that, sure, maybe telecom promises 6 months, so if we concede and if we accept everything they say is true, even though it's not, the best case scenario is that after 6 months of complete destruction, we're going to start to rebuild, which means that you're looking at a terrible situation for the UK economy. We know that 1.4% growth of GDP is lower than ideal. You usually want 2 to 3% growth of GDP and 2 to 3% unemployment, so it's not doing fine. It's going to do much worse if this compounds with Brexit. Second response here is that they say that telecom and other companies in the UK say, oh, it's going to be fine, we're going to be able to build it in 6 months. The issue here is that, of course, the company is going to say that. The company wants to make a profit. They want to make money. Of course, they're going to tell the government, yeah, we can do it. Yeah, we can make it. It'll be easy. They're not going to say, no, we're sorry. It's impossible. We're not able to. We can't trust them. We know that it's crucial because clearly the UK government, if it could, would want to favor UK companies. The fact that it has made this deal shows that it knows that it needs Huawei in order to implement this infrastructure. If it didn't need Huawei, it wouldn't have made the deal. The fact that the UK has done this is the proof in and of itself, and we'd rather trust the UK government in this analysis rather than one specific telecom company. In addition, even if it were true that telecom and other UK companies could do this in 6 months, that's still a 6-month period that's much worse if we pass the plan than if we don't pass the plan, considering that Huawei is just as safe. On the idea of them saying that, oh, we'd rather the Western economy grows than the Chinese economy grows because we're looking at, for the UK, they agree that we're looking at net benefits for everyone, so economic growth in general is going to be weighed the same in this round. Then, on, and also the UK-based businesses are still going to control 65% of the market share of the telecom business because of this limiting in the deal of Huawei at 35%. So it's just enough that it'll work out, but not enough that we're destroying the British companies. They completely concede to our subpoint B of agriculture here, which is important because this also leads to the harming and destruction of the UK economy when we know that 70% of the land in the UK and the United Kingdom is agricultural land, which means that if we're not able to have this 5G network soon to help connect and integrate the farms and help modernize the agriculture, we're going to see a huge loss in that industry and a collapsing of those jobs. Our second contention here is about harming the climate change. They basically put themselves in a double bind. They say that the plan is gonna, they say that this deal is gonna help the Chinese economy, and then they follow up by saying that a worse economy means more reliance on oil and gas. So obviously, if we increase the Chinese economy, it also means that we're transitioning the Chinese economy from oil and gas to a more green future, which is crucial. And then finally, the third contention, they basically say that 5G will happen no matter what, but we've explained why this isn't the case and why we'd rather trust the UK government on why we need Huawei rather than the companies that are going to seek to profit from it and tell lies about how they can do it. So for all these reasons, the UK should not reverse its decision to incorporate Huawei into the development of the 5G network. Thank you.
Everybody good? Judge, this round comes down to one simple fact, which is that Huawei's 5G network is the network of the future. The US, the UK, and Germany already have embraced it or are starting to embrace it, and by turning our back on it, we throw the UK economy into ruin and potentially allow climate change to get even worse. So let's talk about our first voting issue today, which is that of the UK economy. The first thing that is crucial is that they have conceded throughout this entire round that the UK economy and UK 5G networks are completely reliant on Huawei and have been for 15 years. This is not something that we can just rip out tomorrow. If their plan passes, every major telecom network in the UK is forced to rip out the fundamental key piece of infrastructure that allows it to work. It means that the UK economy will bust. They cannot continue to rely on 5G networks and on telecom companies that have built their entire companies off Huawei when Huawei is banned. That is not possible. Furthermore, they've conceded that Germany and the rest of the Western world is using Huawei, so there's nowhere to turn to. When they tell you that the UK should turn towards German companies, Germany, earlier, before the UK even did it, allowed Huawei to integrate into their system. So if they turn to Germany, Germany's going to just say, hey UK, you should probably use Huawei too. That's what the rest of the world is doing. They concede that even the United States Secretary of Commerce has stated that they are allowing contracts for US companies to work with Huawei. There is nowhere else for the UK to turn. In their very best case scenario, you are relying on an overconfident statement from one company in South Korea that believes they can rebuild 15 years of infrastructure in the UK in 6 months. Even 6 months is too long, and the UK economy will be destroyed in the process, which is not something we can allow. Because what does that look like? That looks like people without jobs. That looks like an economy that has a situation where college kids don't have anywhere to go. An economy that shows that people in the UK will be thrown into poverty and will be hurting explicitly because they make the irrational decision to remove a network that has been part of the UK for 15 years. The only real response they have to this is to say that we don't want to embolden the Chinese military, but the fact is they concede throughout this entire round that Huawei is not tied to the Chinese military. It is a completely separate company where any money that goes to Huawei alone and not to the Chinese government. That takes out any argument they want to make about the Chinese military because there's simply no money going there. Finally, they concede that there's not a development of new radar technology going on, but just that they're transferring existing 5G technology to the UK, which is a point I make and they let stand throughout this entire round. Moving on to our second voting issue today, which is going to be that of energy efficiency and global warming. This is the most important issue in today's round because global warming is the final issue that affects us all and is the most important issue facing the world today. We tell you in our first speech that 40% of the energy in the UK comes from homes and residential use of energy, and that this energy will get far more efficient, that will pollute far less under a 5G network, which Huawei uniquely supplies. They want us to turn our back on that, at least for 6 months, but probably for the rest of the time of the UK because they're ripping out infrastructure that is allowing the UK to become a greener nation faster. At the point where you do that, they are contributing to global warming, which is going to have sea level rise and all of these traumatic, terrible issues that will affect the UK for generations to come. The only tiny thing they have to say back to this is the idea of brain drain, but they concede that it is literally in the deal that the UK will only hire people from the UK to do the installation and maintenance of Huawei within the UK, and that any minor immigration is probably a good thing because people are going to be able to send resources and money back to developing countries to develop those countries and their systems faster. So for all those reasons, we strongly urge that the UK not go back on their decision to integrate Huawei. Thank you.
Everybody ready? Cool. Let's get into it. There are two things I have to do in this speech to ensure that Ryan and I get the ballot. First and foremost, we have to prove to you that the switch to 5G will be an easy one and it won't have all the economic decline and climate change impacts they talk about. Second, we have to prove that there's at least a risk to incorporating this deal. If we can prove that the switch happens efficiently, and if we prove that there's a risk to not shifting, then you can sign your ballot for the affirmation. But first, why exactly do we know for certain that we can switch to 5G? We tell you, there's South Korean Telecom, there's Douche, there's Vodafone, these three key companies that have empirically proven 5G technology. Now they tell you that this is just the company bantering. This is the company lying, trying to hype themselves up, saying that this is an achievable feature and that it's actually going to take longer than 6 months. However, they completely concede the fact when we tell you that South Korean Telecom already has 5G development within the United Kingdom. This isn't a fantasy, this isn't some dream, this is reality. We also tell you that Vodafone and Douche have already made deals with the Cultural Secretary to develop these. As much as they tell you that this is a fantasy, as much as they tell you that this won't happen, it already is. We already are seeing a shift away from these companies, from Huawei technologies. This solves for the entirety of the disadvantages because we tell you that the whole UK economy point is gotten rid of. In fact, one of the key arguments that goes completely conceded is we tell you that the United Kingdom Cultural Secretary of Economy himself tells you that this whole propaganda, the propaganda that they prophesize that Huawei is the only 5G option, is propaganda at that. The actual Secretary of Economy for the UK says there are alternatives. Alternatives that solve for every negative impact that the negative comes up here and tells you about. So, we know that this is just fear-mongering. We know that there's available options. Now, even if they tell you that 6 months is too long, we tell you that the UK has its greatest economic growth. They tell you 4% unemployment is too high, but 4% unemployment is the lowest in UK history. We also tell you that its 1.4% GDP growth is unprecedented right now. So, the UK has a booming economy that can handle this shift. We have alternative options that don't have a risk. So, what exactly is the risk of incorporating Huawei technologies? It's pretty clear. The risk of military escalation. Now, they continue to tell you that the profits won't go back to the Chinese government. But there's a couple responses. First, completely extend when Ryan tells you that Huawei is state-owned. It's a state-owned property, meaning the economic gains completely and entirely feed into the military. Even if they tell you that it's this small 35%, 35% across the entirety of the UK is a large
Point of order, stop
amount.
time.
Yes.
The argument that Huawei is a state-owned company and that all of their money goes to the Chinese military is a new argument. It shouldn't be made in our last speech, especially since we've been saying this entire round that it is a privately owned company, which is true.
Ryan made it during his speech. It's judge discretion. I have it on my paper. I'm sure he has it on his flow. Like, we made the argument that it's state-owned back in the other speech.
So, judge discretion, obviously, but sure.
Continuing on. But let's say you don't buy the fact that Huawei is state-owned. Let's say if you think Audrey's POO is valid and that we don't make that argument. The argument that you can extend right here is the bolstering of the party. They completely ignore our joint modernization and our legitimacy arguments. that right now the fragmentation within Chinese parties is being unified by this push in 5G. We don't even have to win that profits are going to the military because we are winning that there's this symbolic unification and push for the military. To the point where they can see all of our impacts. That this increased military technology, increased military economic growth, increased military pride leads to escalation in the Senkaku Islands in the South China Sea. We're winning this debate. Because that outweighs pretty much every single other argument. There are two key reasons that are going to bolster the military. Whether it's funds that go directly to, even if it's not state-owned, they tell you themselves that it could gain through stock shares. But even if you don't buy that the funds are going to, there's at least this symbolic push. They tell you that other countries are accepting Huawei, so the UK should too. But when do they address the fact, a statistic you can look up right now, that the United States has completely blacklisted Huawei technologies from United States towers? When do they address the fact that Huawei Technologies employees were just arrested in Australia for IP theft? When do they address the fact that there's a major risk of security, that there's a major risk of military bolstering, and that right now we have alternatives? It's for these reasons that you have to vote AF, that we have to protect the UK. Shake hands, but like, it's not